This video is going to cover the peripheral nervous system, which can be a very detailed portion of the entire nervous system. This is the last thing we're going to cover in this AMP1 lecture at this time. The peripheral nervous system is talking about cranial nerves and spinal nerves. There's 12 pairs of cranial nerves, there's 31 pairs of spinal nerves. You do have to know the structure of a peripheral nerve. In the other section, in nervous system 1, we talked about neurons, we talked about sensory nerves and motor nerves, and sensory neurons and motor neurons. And a nerve is very similar to a muscle and how it's designed and put together. This is actually a really good picture of an actual nerve. Now we're talking about nerves at this point. This is you can see the blue, that's a myelinated axon. See, it's sticking up. And this is a bundle of nerve fibers. So this is actually called a fascicle. It's just like with the muscle, but this is an entire nerve. So we're talking about like the radial nerve, the ulnar nerve, the sciatic nerve, the femoral nerve, the axillary, the big nerves in the body that go out to organs and glands. So if you start here first, the epineurium is this outside layer. Now, this is labeled for you in our PowerPoint. In fact, I'll just use that one. So here's the epineurium, see it here. These are fascicles, which are bundles of nerve fibers, just like with the muscle. There's an axon, the myelin sheath, and then endoneurium is a layer that surrounds each individual axon. Because nerves are very similar to a muscle in that you're not always going to have to recruit every portion of a nerve, as far as recruiting muscle and strength and that kind of thing. Okay, so as far as classification goes, we kind of talked about this. Sensory nerves are carrying information into the brain or spinal cord. Motor nerves are going away from the brain or spinal cord. Some nerves are mixed, which means they contain both motor and sensory axons or nerve fibers. So this thing sticking up, they may have some axons from sensory nerves, unipolar neurons that are associated with a peripheral body part. And they also may have some motor neuron axons that are coming off the spinal cord. Okay, and there's an easy way to for cranial nerves, there's an easy way to distinguish that. But 12 pairs of cranial nerves. Now, this is pretty much the common picture you see. So these are showing, and they're labeled. This is olfactory, optic, oculomotor. See the 1, 2, 3, the Roman numerals, they're they're numbered after how they were discovered. Trochlear, trigeminal, abducens, which is there. Facial, that's the one that's Bell's palsy. Glossopharyngeal, accessory, vestibulocochlear is hearing and equilibrium. Hypoglossal, tongue. Vagus is called the wanderer. The vagus nerve actually goes all over the body. It is a cranial nerve, but it travels outside the brain and innervates just about every organ and gland. Well, a lot of areas of the body. Okay, what do you have to know? You have to know the correct order these go in. See, olfactory, optic, oculomotor, trochlear, trigeminal, abducens, facial, acoustic, vestibulocochlear, glossopharyngeal, vagus, the wanderer, I told you about that one, spinal accessory, hypoglossal. Be able to pick these out. Over here is a little mnemonic. You take the first letter and you make something. On old Olympus tower and top to fit in German view some hops. So if you can know that and you can take the first letter, it helps you associate that with this term. What this mnemonic tells you on here, like it says here, some of these are sensory, some are motor, some are both, which means they are mixed. They have both motor and sensory fibers. Some suckers may marry, but my brother says bad business, my. S is sensory, M means they're strictly motor, B means they're both. Like the trigeminal nerve, big nerve in the face. And I was looking at and that's fine for our purposes, but the trigeminal is a huge nerve in the face. I don't know how you would rate this. I used to work in a hospital. I worked for a neurologist for a while. But one of the more painful conditions a person can get, and it's called a condition, it's called trigeminal neuralgia. And it's like tooth pain in your face. So think about how bad, if you've ever had a tooth you had a cavity go too long. I was in graduate school. I was broke, had no insurance. I had a cavity one time, and it eventually just went bad. It probably was a year and a half. I should have got it fixed, but I had no money. I was broke. And it finally got to the point where I just went to the dentist and said, pull it. This is my back tooth, the only tooth I've ever lost. And that tooth kind of pain is devastating. And trigeminal neuralgia is supposed to be like that for the entire face. So you have to know the order they go in. Like I said, the order they're in here is how they were discovered. Now, spinal nerves, which are these. There are 31 pairs of spinal nerves. A person actually has 30 vertebrae, but there's one extra cervical. There's 7 cervical vertebrae. There's one extra cervical nerve. So see, it goes C1 through C8. Those are cervical. T1 through T12 is thoracic. L1 through L5 is lumbar. There are 5 sacral nerves and 1 coccygeal nerve. So 31 total. And we had discussed this earlier as far as what is a spinal nerve. Remember, it's got the dorsal root ganglion, and the ventral root. And so there's the breakdown of all the numbers. So dorsal root. Now, this is a great picture. See this? Now, here's the spinal cord. This is the back. This is the front. So this on the back here, this is the dorsal root. There's the dorsal root ganglion. And then out here, like I was saying earlier, when it comes out the intervertebral foramen, that's officially a spinal nerve. And this part here is called the ventral root. There's actually one that's got this labeled for you. So ventral root, there. Wow. Well, that's not right. So I got to do something about that. Here's, let me go back. I don't want to start this video over. Let's just say, boys and girls, when you see this video, this will not look like this. So it's got the ventral root pointing here, which this is the back. Here's the dorsal root pointing there. The dorsal root ganglion is correct. Good deal. And then here's the spinal nerve. But all those comprise a spinal nerve, and those travel out and they make the big nerves that go out to organs and things. Now, these are called, I don't want this to be confusing. What we just did, so, okay, here's the front, here's the back. The spine, remember, think of somebody's spines on the back. You ever see the Hulk movie? That thing he fought in the Hulk movie had giant spines coming out the back. That would be this way. So the back, this would be the dorsal root. Here's the ventral root. That's the dorsal root ganglion. So what happens is, once this exits the vertebrae, it becomes a spinal nerve. Well, then the spinal nerve, parts of it go to the back, parts of it go this way, and then the visceral branch is the part that actually goes out to organs. Visceral means organ. And then all these little things here are the meningeal branch. So the meningeal branch goes right back to the meninges. The visceral branch here is going to go to all the major organs. The dorsal or posterior branch, which is that, you see it's going back to the muscles of the back. Some people that have a pinched nerve, they may have pain right behind their vertebrae because that nerve's going back there. And then the ventral branch here is the part that's going to go out to all like the front of the body, like it says here, plexus that travel to muscles of arms and legs. And we're about to get to plexus. Now, these spinal nerves, when they come out, you can see here, here's all the, as we had mentioned earlier. I wonder if I can just, yeah, good. So here are the nerves. You see when they come off in the upper and the lower part. So this was called the cervical enlargement. Remember, this is called the lumbar enlargement. They form what are called plexus. They come out here. They get redistributed into these different areas. And a plexus is like a network of nerve fibers. And it's really ingenious. Like the cervical plexus actually has nerve fibers from C1 to C8. And that's actually this one. See this? I'm sorry, C1 through C4. My bad. Cervical plexus. What I was going to say is if you just had one nerve coming off, if that got damaged, then you couldn't breathe because the cervical plexus makes up, the fibers come off, they all come together, and they form this thing called the phrenic nerve, which goes down to the diaphragm. So if you only had one nerve coming off and it got damaged, you wouldn't be able to breathe. See, if something happened to C1, you would still have C2 through C3 and C4 fibers coming down to help keep the diaphragm working. So you have to know what nerves are part of which plexus. So here's the brachial plexus, which are all of these except the phrenic, which is part of the cervical. The intercostal nerves just go to the ribs. They don't make a plexus. And then you have what's called the lumbosacral plexus, which is the lower lumbar and the sacrum. This is written verbatim for you in your outline. So there's the rami. So here's that blown up. So here's the meningeal branch. Don't look at these. Here's the dorsal ventral and the dorsal ganglion. Here's the dorsal branch. This is the ventral branch, and this is visceral branch. See, these come down, make little ganglia, they go to the organs. All right, so nerve plexus, C1, C4. The phrenic nerve is part of that plexus. Goes down to the diaphragm, that's the breathing muscle. The brachial plexus, this is the upper extremities. Musculocutaneous goes to the gun show, the bicep. Axillary, if you know your body regions, that's armpit. The median nerve is the one when you hit your elbow, and they call it your funny bone. It goes right underneath the trochlea. That goes down the middle. That's also one that's common with carpal tunnel. It goes between those two tendons in the hand. The radial nerves on the thumb side, the ulnar nerves on the pinky side. The lumbosacral plexus, what nerves are part of that? The obturator nerves, which are the hips, femoral, sciatic, tibial, fibular nerves, lower leg, pudendal nerve. That one's a little, I don't know, how do you say that? It's not quite in the front, not quite in the back. It's in the hip area. It's kind of a personal area, so I'll leave it at that. Oh, there we go. So here are the arm ones. See, they're coming off, and I'm sorry, the writing is so small. There's musculocutaneous. There's the ulnar radial. This one, there's the median one. So it goes right down the middle there. Lumbosacral. There's the sciatic, the biggest nerve. And you can see on one of these, see pudendal, see it tucks right under there. So, yeah, anyway. So there's hips, obturators right there, sacral, sciatic, tibial, and basically know, as far as these plexus go, know what nerves belong to each plexus. All right, the last portion of this, the autonomic nervous system. You have to know, okay, sympathetic, parasympathetic, and then there's one detailed part to this, and I'll show you a diagram. Neurons of the autonomic nervous system are efferent or motor neurons. Yes, they're traveling out to organs, glands, smooth muscle, that kind of thing. Now, this is the part that's got some detail to it. When these come off the spinal cord, they form ganglia in some different areas. The sympathetic division, some of the preganglionic fibers travel to chain ganglia, paravertebral ganglia. I'll show you that. They're on each side of the spinal cord. They'll synapse there, and then they will then travel out to organs from there, or glands. Some of these fibers pass through the trunks, and they will synapse in what are called collateral ganglia, which are closer to the organs, and then they will actually then synapse with the organs. The sympathetic division, the fight or flight, the preganglionic fibers release acetylcholine, which makes them cholinergic fibers. The postganglionic fibers release norepinephrine, which makes them adrenergic fibers. The parasympathetic are all cholinergic. Their fibers come off the spinal cord. They travel all the way out to the organs or glands. They'll synapse in these small ganglia, and then the postganglionic fibers are very short. And like it says here, they all release acetylcholine. They're all cholinergic. And if you're wondering, what is he talking about? Oh, come on. Come on, come on, come on. Huh. There it is. I was going to get upset with myself. Here's the diagram. So here's the brain. Here's the spinal cord. See, it says sympathetic neurons. So here's the sympathetic division, the neurons associated with the sympathetic nervous system. They come off the thoracic area. Here are the nerves that are coming off of the parasympathetic division. So the cranial and the sacral. See, they come off at the bottom and the top of the spinal cord. And the cranial is up here where the brain is. Here's a preganglionic fiber. It travels all the way out into a ganglion. Remember, those are swollen areas where either cell bodies are or nerve synapse. And let's do the sympathetic first. So, and I'll show you, on each side of a human being, there are 22 pairs of what are called chain ganglia. They're found right outside the spinal cord. Some of the fibers will synapse there. So here's the preganglionic fiber. It's going to connect to another neuron, and that travels out to an effector. See, here's the difference. The autonomic nervous system, we went over reflexes. Remember, that was one long fiber going into the spinal cord to an interneuron, usually connecting to another neuron that had one long fiber going out to a muscle. These involve two neurons. That's really the only difference. And so those synapse, where they synapse, are called ganglia, and they're named after where they are. These are paravertebral ganglion. These are collateral ganglion. So here's the presympathetic fibers of the sympathetic nervous system. They come out here. They release acetylcholine at these ganglia so they can keep the signal going. The postganglionic fibers travel out to the visceral effectors, and they release norepinephrine at those junctions, the NE. What do they control? We're about to get to that. The parasympathetic division, see, they have these long preganglionic fibers. Now, when they do synapse in ganglion, these are called terminal ganglia because they're practically right next to the organs. And they actually release acetylcholine. So these are all cholinergic fibers. And then these would be adrenergic. But the parasympathetic is all cholinergic. And this one's just showing it going all the way out to an organ, synapsing with another neuron, and it's very short to another organ. Okay, I hope that's not confusing. But here are some of the functions. Sympathetic division, increase heart rate. Increase blood pressure, increase breathing rate. Like I said, this is called the fight or flight. Dilation of pupils. If you know what that means, your pupil is the opening of the eye. So if your eyes were black, the pupil, you have a cat, you ever turn the lights on, your cat's pupils get really small, trying to control the amount of light going in. Yeah, sympathetic, you want your pupils dilated so you can get as much light as possible so you can see the best you can see. It decreases digestive activity. It decreases excretion, urination, defecation, anything like that. Dilation of respiratory bronchioles. You want to get as much air in your lungs as you can. So all that's the sympathetic division. The parasympathetic division does the exact opposite. Decreases heart rate, blood pressure, breathing rate. Pupils constrict. Increases digestive activity. Increases excretion. Constricts respiratory bronchioles. So, in fact, EpiPens, people having asthma, those are epinephrine, epinephrine is another name for adrenaline, which is part of the sympathetic division. See, it's going to dilate bronchioles. So, all right, let me show you. There's a couple of diagrams here. This is one of the sympathetic division, and you really have to just know what each division does, like I just showed you in that chart. So here are the paravertebral ganglia, and see, you could follow these out, and you can see where some of them synapse there. Some pass through, they'll come out here, and they'll synapse. Oh, I'm sorry, here. See, these are the collateral ganglia. But these are the prefibers. They have a slightly different color. And then here are the post fibers. And you see where they connect. Here's eyes, heart, lungs. liver, stomach, intestines, genitals. All that's the sympathetic division. They come off the middle part, the thoracic area. There's a key at the bottom that shows the preganglionic, postganglionic. Here's the parasympathetic. They come off the cranial and sacral areas. So they come out here. Here's some of the ganglia. They're called terminal ganglia. So the prefibrous synapse here, they're all cholinergic. They release acetylcholine, and then they go out and connect to the same organs. See, genitalia, kidneys, stomach, liver, lungs, all that. All right, so I hope that's a good summary. I hope that helps. You're officially at the end of your material, and now you're ready to take the final exam, which is over the entire semester. So, yeah, read through this a few times. This is a difficult section. Probably the most difficult part is this part explaining how do the fibers come off the spinal cord, what ganglia do they travel to, and then what kind of neurotransmitters they release. So make sure you go over that. All right. Well, thanks for joining me.